Yo, hey guys, it's Beast, back with some more beastly content, and today we are going to be doing a video over how to make your loot farms way easier, faster, and more enjoyable, as well as getting the most materials out of your loot farm. So, we're going to be covering every single item you can be using, every single held item, every single perk you might want on a disassembly bench, or anything. So, let's go ahead and start with the disassembly bench here now. So, first things first. First thing to note on the disassembly bench is there are two perks you are actually going to want to be getting. As you can see here, mine do currently have them. Now, if you're not able to actually get the Mamatic unlock to get them, you can actually just get someone else in the server. Just ask in the chat if anybody has a 2-perk disassembly bench. But let's go ahead and talk about these 2 perks now. So the first things first, there is the Careful Disassembly Bench perk, and it is unlockable in the Mamatic specialization slots of the level 5, 10, and 15. This one will enhance the parts, plastic, and fabrics you get from this disassembly bench. So parts does sound like this should also be boosting electronic parts. But aside from that, there is the disassembly bench electronic parts perk that is another 5, 10, or 15 Mamatic specialization, and this one will give you 30% more electronic parts from your disassembly. I think it's electronic parts and metal scraps. You don't really need the metal scraps, you're gonna have way too much, but regardless, let us continue. So now that we've got the perks out of the way, I think the next thing I actually want to go ahead and cover is how to survive the areas, and we're gonna go ahead and talk about the main farm areas as well as just what you need to do to prepare for each one. So first things first, there's pretty much 3 main farm areas in the Ember Strands region. Those include the Sunshroud Cave, that also includes Ashington, as well as the Firethroat Fortress. Now, there is technically another region being the Fire God Research Center. It is up to you if you want to do this. I don't actually think it's full tier 5 materials. I mean, I think it drops some, but it's not really the best. The primary 3 I recommend are going to be Firethroat, Ashington, and Sunshroud Cave, because we do still have some other ones we want to be hitting daily over here. So there's really only 2 main farm areas, and it's 3 technically because there's 2 areas beside each other. You want to be doing the Wishland in the Onyx Tundra, and you want to be doing both sides of the Wishland farms. There is actually some regions over in the Onyx Tundra itself besides, the Venja Ford area. You're going to want to be doing a couple farm areas over here, and I'll explain why you're going to be wanting to do those in a minute when we get on the items. But for now, for the main loot items, it's just Wishland, Frost Forge, and then the 3 areas in Ember Strand. So, Wishland is good for the electronic parts and rubber. Same with Frost Forge, and those are like mainly the key 2 ingredients you're going to be wanting this season is rubber and electronic parts. So you're going to want to go ahead and go get Frost Forge and Wishland done. As to what you need to be bringing for each area, so anywhere in the Venja Ford area, so Wishland or Frost Forge, you need to be bringing yourself some helium as well as some sort of food item that will be giving you a temperature buff. So my favorite one and the best one to get, and people are selling it on servers usually in their shops in Oblivion, or you can make it yourself, it just requires the 4 main, temperature controlling food items, is the all-weather stew. This will give you a 30% resistance to cold and heat, so you can use it in either of the 2 regions that I mentioned, either the hot regions or the cold regions, and it's super duper easy to get. All-weather stew is definitely the way to go, and with that, I think we're going to go ahead and cover one final thing. So this is going to be a way to save yourself some rubber, provided that you have an Artisan's Touch hand in your inventory. And let me go ahead and tell you where you can actually farm the Artisan's Hand. So, first of all, in Ashington, there are 2 different bosses, both one in the mall and one in the little, building area. There's one of those flame guys with a little giant one eye. Both of those have a chance of dropping the Artisan's Touch over there in Ashington. If you're looking for a lower level area, we're going to go ahead and head on into the Onyx Tundra now, and we're going to talk about a couple areas over here. So, first things first, Mooseville Sweets Factory. There's actually this one right here. So this right here, this building right here in the Mooseville Sweets Factory, there's an enemy in there who has a chance of dropping the Artisan's Hands, meaning that you can get them from phase 1 of the season. Alrighty, and one final thing I wanted to go ahead and cover about the Artisan's Hand is that if you've acquired this in a previous season, or maybe even in your next season, all you need to do is head on over to Eternal Land anytime your armor is actually low on repairs. Place yourself down an isolated containment unit. You only have to do this once. Go ahead and ahead and place yourself a previous season Artisan's Hand, and then head on over to the supplies bench, and as you can see here, you can actually craft all-purpose hands in Eternal Land, and when you use them in Eternal Land, they will actually repair your gear that you are using on your current season, meaning that it's basically free repairs. This will save you a lot of rubber and other items. As you can see here, we're just going to go ahead and start using this. Now, in order to actually craft things on the supply bench, it does require Astral Sand, which as you can see, we are kind of low. So, in order to actually get Astral Sand, you need to click this little Eternal Land item over here, click Shop Order, go ahead and click Sell. Now, you can either sell from your current backpack, which is just like, you know, this stuff. You can sell this stuff, which does hold some value. You can sell deviations for some value, as you can see here. So, I think this is just like what's in the inventory, and then this is the Eternal Land side. Another thing to note about Mooseville Sweet Factory is it is one of the 2 locations I recommend for farming cheese. Cheese is used in a very, very, very OP cooking item, a very OP item, guys. It's going to make your farms a lot better. It's going to make all sorts of farming of any sort, from ores to anything, a lot better, and we'll be covering that when we get on into the food buffs. The other area for cheese is, once again, Mooseville, and like I said, in Onyx Tundra or Venja Forge, you're going to want to bring helium, and you're going to want to bring yourself an all-weather stew. Most cases, you should be fine without even have to worry about the armor items. However, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the armor bench, and I'm going to tell you the best temperature buff items for your chest piece and your pants, obtainability wise and everything, you know, just best overall. You know, this will work, this will do, and this is all you need, you know what I'm saying? So for the chest, it's actually the crocodile hide for heat resist, and it's a velvet for the cold resist. Now, crocodile hide can be farmed in Wishland, in the like clam looking building. You go down into it, it goes underground. It's in the zoo side of Wishland. We will be going to the farm areas in a bit. That can be used for your heat resist. As for the velvet, this is amazing too. Inside of Wishland, there's a bunch of flamingos in like the zoo area, but it's like beside where the bears are and everything. Anyway, that area there's a whole bunch of flamingos. Kill them, they will drop feathers. Feathers can then be converted into what is velvet, and velvet will give you the best cold resist. You're going to need that on your chest piece and your pants. Those are the only 2 pieces of armor that will be giving you either heat or cold resist. Another thing to mention is if you do have the Blackstone BP set, then you will also be getting either a cold and heat resist of 2.5, or if you've made it a specialization armor, and this can work for any piece technically. So if you make it a specialization armor meant specifically for cold or heat, it'll either do a 5% boost to cold or a 5% boost to heat resistance on your 1 set boost. So we have a heat set built. We don't actually have a cold set built. We just kind of use helium and an all-weather stew and make do. But now that we've actually covered surviving that, we're going to get on into some held items. And these are some items that are nomadic specialization locks and things like that. But they're all very, very good items. And you can purchase them in shops like Oblivion. So if you go to Oblivion and go shop around at the trucks, you can be finding these if you don't actually get the nomadic perks. But we're going to be covering everything. And we're going to start with the most important one, in my own opinion, for getting the most electronic parts, and that is an electronic grabber. And to my knowledge, a tier 3 electronic grabber gives you a 30% chance to obtain 1 to 3 additional electronic modules when opening a storage crate. So we're going to go ahead and grab the expiring soonest one right here. So we're going to go ahead and grab an electronic grabber. This is a nomadic specialization unlock, being the 5, 10, and 15 nomadic specialization slots. Once again, people are always selling these things in their vending trucks. They're announcing it on the server, hey, selling electronic grabbers. If you see them up for grabs, buy them, especially if you don't got one, because they're going to be giving you a lot more electronic parts. So the next thing I want to talk about is the backpack expansion here, guys, and it's a, once again, 5, 10, or 15 nomadic unlock. I actually do have it. At the most, it'll boost your load of 80%, and it lasts for 14 days, so you only need to make one every 2 weeks. Pretty OP for 80 extra permanent load, as long as you have it in your inventory. We're going to go ahead and throw that in our inventory now. So, the next thing we're going to actually get on into, before we get on to what I really want to get on into, which is like the most OP item in this video, we're going to be using the Enhanced Snowmobile. Now, the reason why we're using this is because in the cold areas, we will actually have movement speed plus 10, as well as plus 20. So we'll have 30% faster movement speed And yeah, roll, melee, stamina, sprint, cost reduction -25. So we're just going to be moving overall a lot faster in the snow. I'll go ahead and tell you the levels for this one. It's going to be only the level 5 Mimetic specialization slot. I found this in Oblivion. I do not have this Mimetic personally. I just bought it off of a truck. Once again, go to Oblivion, shop the trucks, check all worlds. You're probably going to find one of these. And that is it for the key held items. Now we're going to go ahead and get on into some, well, actually we have one more besides that. I think it's actually in here. And this is for looting, but it's mainly for like, technically Frost Forge has some ores you might want to be mining every single time, so it might be coming in handy there. So load handling is actually an item that will give you a reduced weight of logs, gravels, and ores you carry by 80%. Load handling can be unlocked in the level 5 and 15 Mimetic slots. Once again, I didn't get it unlocked. I bought it out of a truck. It looks like the max tier is an 80% decrease in weight. That's going to be helpful if you're either needing to go gather ores, gather logs, or you're just doing Frost Forge and you're running through the cave and collecting all the tungsten, aluminum, silver, etc. because it's good XP anyway. So, just another item to mention. We're going to go ahead and throw it in our inventory because it takes up a whopping half a pound, so should be fine in there, and it is something we will eventually be using. On to the next thing is going to be the consumable items. Alrighty, and for the consumable items, we're actually going to start out with the whims. I'm only going to cover 3 whims here. There are probably more whims that may be helping you out during your exploration of things. I'm thinking there's actually a whim that will make you invisible, but we have other things that make us invisible, so we're not worried about that. So, first things first, Utter Delight. Now, Utter Delight is like an underlying effect sort of thing. While active, extends other whims by 35%. That means that, like, if you're using a load boost one or a spring legs one, you'll be able to have it for 35% longer. So, pretty helpful. It is obtainable by having the disco ball deviation. I bought this one in the vending shops in Oblivion. Like I said, most of these items mentioned in this video are going to be able to be purchased just from vending shops in Oblivion if you do not actually have the disco ball deviation. Apparently, he can be a reward from completing the Hell's Moving House quest, which is like a weekly little mini event sort of thing you can do, but once again, I don't actually have the disco ball. I just bought these in Oblivion, like you can do too. Spring Legs is obtainable by having the Frog the Leaper deviation. I actually do have Frog the Leaper. Frog the Leaper's easiest place to farm from Phase 1 is going to be Silo Delta. Just run it over and over. The little like mini boss in the middle there, and you actually have to do it on, I think, normal or hard. Actually, you can do it on Pro, but there's no boss there, so it might actually be a little easier on Pro. Regardless, Spring Legs is super nice. It's jump height plus 3.5 meters, but will cost extra 15 stamina, which isn't a problem. The extra jump height comes in very, very handy. One final one to cover is Featherweight. Now, Featherweight, I actually don't think there's anything that can actually drop this. I think it's just like they give it out in events sometimes, and then I found it for sale, and I found 48 of them for sale in Oblivion in the shopping trucks. Once again, so check Oblivion. You should be able to find yourself some Featherweights. We are going to be covering some food items that surpass the Featherweight in a ton, but aside from that, I did figure we would go ahead and cover the Featherweight. On to the next thing of one final held item. This is a very nice held item. This is a Mimetic specialization held item, and let's go ahead and talk about it. So it's called the Spectral Cloak. Now, it can be unlocked on your slots level 40, 45, or 50 slots, and it costs 60 electronic parts to make it. So, activate to become cloaked for 120 seconds. Upon leaving combat, you'll become stealthy. Use up to 10 times. So, if you don't ever enter combat and use this, you can just go invisible. So this item can actually be used for really low levels to go do any loot farm area they can, provided they have the heat resistance. Another thing to mention about heat resistance. So, you may want to be taking yourselves with you some corn ale or the one that's made with wheat. I think it's like Stardust Ale or something like that. Regardless, this will give you sanity plus 1,000. And prevent sanity from dropping due to environmental conditions and heat stroke. So what this means is if you take a corn ale with you and you drink it, for 30 minutes you will be absolutely immune to the heat, no matter if you have any heat resistance things or not. So you can go loot the high level hot areas even if you don't have codium or all-weather stew or anything else just by using a corn ale. Just a nice little tip I figured I'd mention there. I've used it a couple times to survive the heat areas when I didn't have any codium. And once again, with the cloak plus this, you're going to be set. So with the cloak, like I said, you can go invisible and harvest any area. You can actually go run silo away and do it on all 3 difficulties. Just loot the chest with the spectral cloak and get a whole bunch more tier 5 materials for absolutely free, not even having to challenge any enemies. Once again, spectral cloak, pretty OP. Now we're gonna get on into the food. So like I said, for the first one, I already mentioned it earlier, it's something called the all-weather stew. We're gonna go ahead and head over to our fridge here so we can just take a look at that real quickly. But it is called the all-weather stew, and as you can see in the fridge, it has like, you know, a good 10 days or so it can stay. But it's actually 30 heat or cold resist. Also, remove heat streak and hypothermia, so you can't get heat stroke or hypothermia and die if you consume one of these, so this will help you out. For any of you struggling to deal with the temperatures, maybe your armor doesn't have the proper heat and cold resist. Once again, I told you about the heat and cold resist earlier, but just something else I figured I might go ahead and mention for you. So, the other thing is deviated chops. Now, let me go ahead and tell you the 2 areas this actually has any use for when you're doing loot farm areas. So, first things first. Wishland. If you go to Wishland and use a deviated chops and actually kill the enemies there, it'll be a lot more acid. And the reason for this is because the deviated chops for 30 minutes will grant bonus acid drop when you kill enemies that drop acid. Now, Wishland and Ashington are the only 2 areas that I normally do for the main, you know, farm areas that actually have deviated enemies or deviations for enemies. So those are the only 2 areas you're actually going to ever be using deviated chops for, but just something I figured I would mention. Now, for the final food item, I don't actually currently have it because it requires deviated cucumbers, but it also requires cheese. And this item here, guys, is my favorite item in this game for doing loot farms, especially when you don't have enough carry weight. So this item's honestly more used for like mining ores or going out and gathering fertilizer material, and it's not canned seafood. Though canned seafood's another good one, once again, for the ores. Maybe you want to use it in Frostforge when you're running through the cave to get a few extra ores out of it. But the anti-gravity milkshake, guys, is an absolutely amazing food item. Now, it just says used to increase your max load by 30, or your max load for 30 minutes. Do you want to know what your load will be set to when you use this item? Now, it is we're going to go up and see, I think it's a drinks. So it's a drink. So you can use this and then any food item. So the good thing is you can use the anti-gravity milkshake with, I'm pretty sure you can use it with the all-weather stew. So we're going to check the all-weather stew real quickly just to make sure. I want to make sure that they're not from drinks. Nope. So you can't, the only downfall of the anti-gravity milkshake and why I have the featherweight is actually because the anti-gravity milkshake cannot be used alongside the all-weather stew. So this will only be usable for areas that you don't have to use an all-weather stew in, because both of them are coming from drinks. But regardless, it is very, very nice, and it's mainly more used for like gathering ores and things like that. And once again, you could, yeah. Anyway, so I think that's about it for the foods that expire. As for the non-expiring foods and consumables, as well as drinks, we're going to get on to the drinks. First of all, I mentioned the corn ale and the stardust ale. Once again, either wheat or corn, you're just going to have to grow it, throw it in a brewing barrel, and it's going to make yourself some corn ale or some stardust ale. You also need purified water, but I digress. So, on to the non-expiring stuff. So, first things first, even though we have all-weather stew and we're going to be fixing our food and everything anyway, we actually prefer to keep like canned lunch meat on us, as well as stardust energy drinks. So stardust energy drinks can be made by having saffron and beets. You can just grow saffron and beets in your farm and you'll be able to make what are called stardust energy drinks. So for 30 minutes you can use these to gain the double jump ability for 30 minutes. So this on top of spring legs will give you an absurd height for your jump. This will allow you to get to all sorts of chests that you normally wouldn't be able to get to very quickly and skip around on the areas, farm it a lot quicker. I always take with me some Stardust energy drinks, so let's go ahead and grab ourselves a Stardust energy drink right now. So, aside from the Stardust energy drink, like I said, canned seafood. This is made from morels. Morels can be gathered just by looting like random seed cabinets, they're called, and they're like the white looking carts. You can go to places like really anywhere and get yourself some morel seeds. They can also drop out of silos from storage crates, things like that. I think they might even be for sale somewhere. Regardless, canned seafood oil is just, you know, that stroke of luck chance with the 66, the 666, or the quad 6. yield bonus for the final strike while mining or logging. Once again, not entirely too important for loot runs, but I figured I would mention it for the ore gains. One other item you might actually want to take with you is going to be the Space Twister. This is obtainable from the Space Turner deviation. Once again, this deviation can drop from Silo Delta for the easiest location from Phase 1. So if you get this when you have a teammate on your team, if you're wanting to like take them to a 4-hour loot farm they haven't actually unlocked yet, or maybe you're wanting to take a low level to a tier 5 area and give them a Spectral Cloak so they can instantly get their tier 5 materials farmed up and instantly get tier 5 armor the instant they're level 40, then you might want to take a Space Twister, because you can just teleport anybody anywhere to your coordinates as long as they're on your team, and I think it'll actually send a teleport to all of your teammates just for using one of them. Another little item you might want to go ahead and take with you, but I think we've covered about all the items, so we're going to go ahead and make sure we just have everything we need here. So we have the load handling, we have the electronics grabber, we have the backpack expansion. For our consumables now, we're going to go ahead and grab ourselves some featherweights, and we're just going to withdraw a couple of these because we are going to be doing every single farm location. The next part of the video is actually just going to be the fastest way of doing the runs for every single run. We're also going to grab some spring legs here. Alrighty guys, and I do believe this is about the end of the video. This has been every single consumable item, held item, perk you need on your mematics or otherwise in order to have the fastest and best loot runs when you are doing your loot runs. We will be covering the fastest loot runs themselves, as just like the path to take to get the loot quickest in the next part of this video. But I do believe this is about the end of the video, so go ahead and leave a like on the video if you did enjoy it, and subscribe if you're not already, and keep it beast mode.